point, I would like to hand over today's proceedings to the project lead for this exercise, that is Dr. Ron Sookram.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kamala, and all the panelists who have been so helpful in actually agreeing to be present with us today, and for you, the members of the audience, to tune in at least to understand what we are doing and what we are trying to promote as it relates to improving governance practices in TNT. Now, as Kamala would have mentioned, this is our third iteration of this project, okay? And though a bit delayed for 2020, for obvious reasons, the school, as well as the CCGI, continues to be very committed in promoting good corporate governance practices, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but ultimately regionally. So this is why we considered disclosure practices as one of the areas that we can focus on as a way of improving and guiding as much as we can companies to reconsider the way in which they would have reported. Because reporting, which is of course disclosing, is essentially the main tool which companies, investors, stakeholders can access or use to really and truly understand a company. So reporting puts information in the hands of the markets, and the markets will make decisions on that type of information. Now, what I wanted to state very early is that the ranking project, this disclosure, has nothing to do per se with whether or not companies on the local stock exchange met the requirements of reporting. I want to emphasize that all listed companies on Trinidad and Tobago have met their legal requirement. They have complied fully as required, and therefore our focus is really on options that are not required, which is the voluntary type of information that companies can provide, and some do, as you will see, but opt because it's not legally required. We are focusing, therefore, on non-financial information that is not required for disclosure. And especially as we look at the changing market landscape and economic landscape in terms of a stakeholder world we live in, where issues such as ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance issues, are now very much in our faces in terms of how they are linked to the reputation of an organization, and by extension, the impact companies will have on the broader society and its constituents. The report and the disclosure that we are looking at is slanted towards this ESG, let's say, category of reporting. Now, so therefore, that shaped the objectives of what we are trying to do. So in the overarching aim is to promote good governance, okay? And we are looking at it through disclosure as an angle. But through this ranking study, we are trying to identify opportunities where companies can use to improve their ESG reporting. We are trying to provide a quantifiable, measurable scoring in that sense, or an evaluation that could guide companies how they can improve among themselves and against each other, if you may put it as a competitive kind of challenge. And of course, with such improvement and such a level of disclosure, the hope ultimately is to enhance the confidence among the market players, okay? As simple as that. However, what I want to emphasize is that in doing this type of evaluation, the focus was not to assess the substance of the report and the governance structures and systems of the organizations per se. Our emphasis is simply to look at the content that was disclosed and to confirm that there is a reporting or disclosure process and procedure in place in the organization. Okay, so our approach was simple in the sense that we are trying to look at an objective way to just verify the content disclosed among these ESG criteria in the reporting of our local listed companies, both against what we consider to be international benchmarks of governance and the national TNT corporate governance code. So we are looking at it from that perspective. And we are looking at disclosure as well, particularly because it is a means through which that companies themselves can do some self-examination, okay? Because through that reporting assessment and how you stack up against each other or against what we have created as a ranking system, companies that subject themselves to internal examination can always have that continuous approach and process of improving. You could also compare against the external players and therefore know where you lie within that domain. And of course, we understand that the public consumption of disclosure of information becomes quite critical in what you do. But the examination, self-examination is also, as you will, in any other management operation practices, is one way that you can continue your individual enhancement and improvement. So the source document, and therefore our primary and only source of information to inform our assessment, it will be the annual report of each company, okay? So we did not go to your website, we did not go anywhere else. We looked at what would be a formal annual report submitted to the SEC, for example, and this is what will be the basis of information to do our evaluation. So in forms of a method, we would have assessed each company against the standards or benchmarks that we have used, as well as the local governance code. And therefore, we will score you accordingly based on what the content has in providing information on these criteria or benchmarks. And as a result, the aggregate score or the total score for each company will be tallied. And of course, the ranking will be based on the total score of each company in this listed group of companies that we have looked at. So essentially, this is our research or our project evaluation method. It's clear-cut. We are not, as I said, questioning the substance of the report and the governance structures of the company. This is much more of a complex assessment to do, as well as it can be subjective. What we are doing here is arguably very objective and straightforward, okay? In terms of our international benchmarks, these have been informed by various, I will say, sources, governance-related sources, codes that are international, the OECD, even the recent ISO 37000 corporate governance guidelines, and therefore the literature that generally promotes what they consider to be good governance practices. There are many others, but we have captured about 27 of these benchmarks that are much more relevant to us and in the context in which we operate. So these are, ladies and gentlemen, the general background, the overview, and therefore the method that we have used in this project. I'll now invite quickly Ms. Salazar, Joanne, to share with